Welcome to the Peoria Riverfront Museum's Art Club. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Heather Placco, the program manager for the museum, and I'm excited to be hosting local artist Carrie Pearce for today's presentation. This Zoom presentation will be recorded and uploaded to the museum's YouTube account following the presentation. If you do not want your image or video visible, please feel free to stop your video from view and then you won't be seen. I've muted everyone to begin with, so please keep your video muted unless you'd like to make a comment or ask a question during the presentation. Carrie invites questions and comments during her presentation, so please feel free to unmute yourself either temporarily or using the spacebar on your keyboard, or unmute using the button at the top. Alternatively, if you do not wish to talk, feel free to ask a question in the comment section and I'm happy to ask that question for you. So without further ado, a big welcome to Carrie Pearce.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm in my studio, which is at my house. So you can see some paintings behind me and lots of little toys and trinkets that I like to paint. So I was going to start with telling you about my earliest inspirations and what led me to become an artist. Talk about some of my processes, how I've changed during COVID, and new paintings I'm working on and new projects. So I'm going to start my presentation now. This is an artist that I first fell in love with, and you can see some of her drawings on the right, and she is pictured on the left. Her name's Ann Adams, and she had polio at a young age of like in her 20s sometime. It was after she had already had a child. She learned to draw. All she had the use of was the facial muscles and her neck muscles. So she learned how to draw with holding a pencil in her teeth. I was trying to learn how to draw as a child, and I couldn't do it with it in my hand. So this fascinated me, that she could hold this pencil in her teeth and draw these lovely little pictures. So I became introduced to this by my grandmother, who bought these Christmas cards every year, all sorts of greeting cards. And so I would copy them hours and hours and just try to copy this. And this is probably around 4 or 5 years old. My next big inspiration was DaVinci, and this was in the early 90s. I went to the Smithsonian and I saw this painting, and I don't know if you've ever seen a DaVinci in person, but it has this glowing that you can't, it's not captured in photographs. You really have to see these in person. This painting was on display and you could walk around it. So the back of the painting is also painted, but I could not find a picture of that. So on the back is like laurel leaves, and I don't remember exactly what he had painted on the back, but I've done that a few times on my paintings. And I'm sure you've all seen the DaVinci at the museum, the wonderful display they had of that. Okay, so then I became interested in using old photographs. The picture on the left, you can see the boy in there, and then I recreated him on the right with toys, and his name's Marshall, so kind of imagined he was in a parade and leading the parade down the street. The old photos, I started using that because I didn't want to use a model. I wanted to paint children because it felt like they lend themselves to my ideas and creativity. And I had this passion for painting toys and candy, which are, to me, represent the rewards of life. When you're a child, if you were good, you got, a candy or a toy or something. So it now means to me the big rewards of life, not just material rewards. So most of my paintings are derived from old photos, and I've always found it interesting that I find these in antique stores, flea markets, garage sales, you name it. And people are so quick to get rid of these photos because they don't know who the people are. It's like, well, I don't know who those people are, which is precisely why I love them. I kind of like to paint people I don't know, because then their ideas or their personality doesn't necessarily come through. These are total strangers that lived hundreds of years ago or 100 years ago. So I don't know, I kind of like to imagine, what did you want to be when you grew up? Or how did your life go? Did you make it past 13? Did you become an old man? Did you live to be 90? Those are all things I like to think about while I'm working on a painting and you're studying someone's face for so long. That's when my imagination sort of takes over and goes wild. A lot of times I have no idea what I'm going to paint. I just start with the person that I want to paint, and I allow myself to be open to ideas that come as they may. Okay, so those were my earliest inspirations. This is sort of how I start a painting. So this is on a panel, a gessoed piece of masonite. And then I wash it with, a dark umber or burnt sienna. It just kind of depends on maybe where I'm going to go with the painting, what the background's going to look like. I might choose a green or gray. And I don't know if you can see, if you look closely, there's lines dividing the board. So by making an X from corner to corner, that's how you find the middle. And then by connecting the middle points to the middle points, you form a triangle. Now you can keep going with this and drawing each point to each other point at every corner. And I'll show you another photo that kind of explains it more. This is called the lines of symmetry. So this is a trick DaVinci used, and many artists used it in the Renaissance. Each intersecting point is an important point that's dissecting the panel into equal portions. So you can use this for composition, and I'll show you later how I've done that with some figures on this particular panel. So here it is. If you keep going, and you can keep going and make all these lines cross, and you can see they have some points plotted out with the dots. So this helps you design your composition and movement through the painting. I find it very useful. I can't live without it. Okay, then, so after this has a more of a gray wash on it than a brown wash. And you can see where I've pulled out some lights from the wash. Can you see on the clothing, sort of some of the folds in the fabric? So that would be another step I might do, is just sort of to try to get my form in there and my figure, and see where the folds are going to lie, and just sort of start sketching it out. I don't grid. I'm too impatient for that. I like to just get going. And if it ends up awkward or weird, or arm is a little too long, that doesn't normally bother me. Sometimes I do find myself changing things, but. Okay, so let me go back actually. So you can see her face is I'm developing her in black and white. So I don't do this all the time, but oftentimes if I really have no idea what I'm going to paint or the direction I'm going to go, I will paint the painting in black and white and just sort of get my values down. It's far easier to change something in black and white than to change it in color. So this painting, this was the first one I started with COVID. So this has started in March. And I decided that I wanted to just cover her in toys. I don't always love painting clothing. So I wanted to experiment with this idea of that the toys became the clothing.
So I'm still painting in black and white here, and I've started to add a bit of color just to see what direction I wanted to go. And I started with a black background. Well, this did not work, was failing miserably because all the toy, I couldn't create any form whatsoever in the clothing. So here's where I've decided to change the background of the dress to red instead of black. The nice thing about red is it's a value very close to black, so you can get a lot of punch and pop. And what I love about red is it seems to work with every color. I haven't found a color that red does not coexist well with. So you can see I'm still developing in black and white and just starting to get a feel for some of the color. Started putting in her skin tones. Now here's where it starts to have more change. Now you see, I've tried to shade this red on the left with the black to get more depth in it. But it was kind of washing it out and killing it. It was becoming too dark, and I didn't have enough space between the objects to render. And you can see her hair was just an idea being formed. And then the right is the finished painting of where it ended up. And you can see her hair's changed. And there's many more stages between here, but they're boring. So I didn't put them all in. So this was sort of my practice patience. I thought once I got this done, COVID would be done. Well, that's not the case. So I worked on this, I want to say 3 or 4 months. I don't even know how many toys are in there, but I do have some close-ups that you can see. Like, I don't think I repeated anything. She has paper dolls on her chest, but like behind the ribbon, which is actually licorice, and ribbon candy is decorating the edges of her dress. And here's some more close-ups. Okay, so that was my first COVID experience. And then, so here's a picture of a painting that was failing miserably. The painting on the left. I have too many figures. It's too small. This is a 24 by 36. So the rendering capabilities were just, it wasn't going to happen. My central figure's facing. I like the positioning of everything else except that the other figures are all looking away. Which, what happens when you do that, since they're looking off the pages going different directions, that will take your eye right off the painting. And the pointing of the elephant, that's taking you off the painting. And I was really liking this idea, but it just wasn't working. And I have hours into this, but at some point you better cut your losses and move on. So during COVID, the painting on the right, so I've started getting black and white, not knowing where I was going to go with this. And I wasn't into it. I couldn't see where it was going, but I didn't want to lose that figure because I liked her. So this was more messing around. So the nice thing about COVID is I was able to like experiment and explore since there's no shows coming up, no place to go or be. So I just started really playing around. So you'll be surprised to see how this painting turned out, which is the next picture. That's what ended up. Same painting, just kept going over it and over it. And I drive by this barn every day, and it's got this old flag on it, which, it's a little tattered and torn, and this red barn, and it's just, the quintessential farmland look. So this is sort of she represents COVID now. So she's got her mask on. She's behind a barbed wire fence, we're all held in captivity pretty much. And the flag is just sort of sad looking. It's not it's not like, I don't know, it just, I feel like the country is going through major change right now. I think everyone does. So this is, I call her the ghost, which to me, the COVID-19 has been a real ghost. It doesn't show itself in everyone. You may or may not have it. It's just a big mystery. There's absolutely no way of controlling this. So also with this, my palette was a humongous palette. I was really into bright colors. I love using bright colors, and I don't know if it's, I wouldn't call it depression. I guess I changed my palette completely. So this painting is done with 2 colors and black and white. So I used yellow ochre, cadmium red, and black and white. It's known as the Zorn palette, but it's actually a palette that's been around forever. You can pretty much create any color you want with those, as long as you don't deviate. Color is about relationship and the color next to it. So that sky with the blue-gray tint to it, if I put it next to blue, it would look gray. But it next to the palette choices, the red and the black, it still appears to be a blue-gray sky. I don't know if that makes sense. I'll show you another one with the same palette. So this one I did right after, and I had this photographed for years, and I didn't really know how to approach it. It's quite blurry, and they were moving a lot. So this is also with the same palette, red, yellow, black, and white. So the black, or the blue, is created from black and white. And this one's called Chicken Coo, not Chicken Coop, but Chicken Coo. I felt like the chickens were going to start uprising if they didn't let us out soon. And then this is one that I did right after that. And this one's called The American Dream. So here I've used the same palette, but I've kicked it up with a few extra colors, adding cadmium yellow, alizarin crimson, and phthalo blue. So this is called The American Dream. And I write poems or stories with 99% of all paintings. A few of them I haven't been doing it lately. I just haven't been in the mood to. But this one is really how I felt. You know, you work your whole entire life to make a dream come true, and my dream is to be, you know, a self-sustaining professional artist. That just got completely pulled up under my feet with COVID, because we can no longer show. You know, our gatherings are typically 50 to 100,000 if we're doing a big show somewhere, traveling the country, which is how James and I make our living. So to not have any shows was just like, oh my God, now what? And then when you don't have a show, it's not as, I still enjoy, I mean, I enjoy painting for painting's sake, but it's the audience for me that finishes the painting. So to be, to never have, to feel like you're not going to have an audience for a year is like, oh my God, like, so no one's going to see it. So then what's the point? So I'll read you the poem that I wrote that goes with this. I need to put my glasses on for that. The soil was rich and warm, but she could hardly hear its heartbeat. She was aware that most things are not important in comparison to the ghost. Closing her eyes, she admired her non-essential dream, reassuring herself that this would end abruptly but not meaningless. So I feel like everyone is an essential. I don't think any job is non-essential. And this sort of represents everyone's dreams who are put on hold. You can see them, they're almost right there at your fingertips, but you just hope they're there when you wake up. Okay. So with that being said, COVID's really changed me in a lot of ways. And I find it interesting because you wouldn't think that that would happen. I've completely lost my sense of humor, meaning I no longer feel like that's something I want to paint. I don't want to paint things that are humorous or funny. I don't want to paint toys anymore. I don't want to paint candy. The things that used to make me giggle or laugh, or I don't know, I really had a lot of humor in my work before, but I'm kind of like serious as a heart attack now. It's kind of like, well, I don't know, can I say shit? Shit or get off the pot kind of thing. I want to take my work to another level. I want to compete at a higher level. I want to learn painting portraits from life. I want to enter competitions and win. So I do understand that my subject matter before was kind of probably preventing some of that. And I have had a bit of success in the pop surrealist world, which, you know, I've been selling these things, so then why stop? But since there's no place to sell now, I go, well, now's the time for change. So I have entered school and I am getting my master's, and today is orientation after this, which ought to be interesting. It's all online. I'm pretty excited about that. You know, and a lot of people go, well, why do you need your master's? There's tons I don't know. I don't pretend to know everything. I don't know everything. I cannot talk the talk that artists today are learning in school. We didn't have that. Critical vocabulary, critical thinking. You know, part of me goes, oh, this is just a bunch of BS. However, let me find out. You know, I kind of feel like, well, teach me something. I want to learn. I'm eager. I'm just ready to move on and do something more or different. So, yay, I'm going to school. So now I'll show you some of the newer work that I'm working on. And this is Gabrielle Marie Test. She's a local girl that modeled for me a couple years ago. And I took all these photos and I never really worked with them because she's not a child. I didn't know where to take them, but I'm so glad we did this, and I want to get her to model for me again soon. Okay, so here's one I'm working on. This kind of shows you my process now. I'm working a little bit different. This I did not start in black and white. I started with the Zorn palette, the 4 colors, or the 2 colors in black and white. Not really knowing which direction this was going to go, but it'd be the next painting after the one you just saw, The American Dream. And this one's going to be called When She Woke. And hopefully it has a better ending. So these are just progress and how it develops and adding things. Trying to figure out the perspective on it was a little challenging, like what to do with all that in the background with the trees. So here I'm really just getting a feel for value and movement. Things have to relate in value to each other, and the lights are going to move you through and the darks are going to move you through. And then I changed her. So you see what she's wearing here. I wanted her to have the same dress on that was in the last one. And I was having a difficult time with her back because she's extremely thin. She's bony and thin. And so, I don't know, somebody with a little meat is a little bit easier to paint. And she has very white skin, which is amazing and beautiful. So then this is not this is not varnished and it's not a real photo, but this is where the piece ended up. And I do really like, there's a softness that you don't really get here, maybe just a little bit in the dress and the hair. But that's where that piece ended. Okay, so here's one that I'm working on, and this has the lines of symmetry on it, that board I showed you prior. And so this painting is going to be called Where I End and She Begins. And kind of, I don't know what I'm going through as an artist right now. So I just am laying in my values, my shadows, and you can see the lines of symmetry. You can see how her body, her arms are kind of following those lines. Their hands are meeting in the center, but just above center. So this is a painting that is going to be meant to be hung either direction. So when it's hanging this way, I'm going to call it Where I End and She Begins. And then if you flip it, now this is the lights put in. Is that the same version? No. So this can be flipped and hung either direction is my plan. And then I would say the opposite. If it was hanging this way, it would be where I end and she begins, or where she ends and I begin. I don't know. It's going to be one of those two. I don't know which direction will be which. And you can see it's going to be able to work both ways. Now, I haven't determined what I'm doing in the background yet. I'm waiting for that to come. Oftentimes, I just have to wait for to see it in my mind's eye, before I can possibly move into it again. So I'm finishing up some pieces. You can see one over my left shoulder. And these are my pieces that I'm going to enter into the Bennett Prize this year. And the deadline is October 16th. And I start school. So wish me luck on getting all of this done. And my next project also. So I'm going to do portraits starting in October. And I've been working on a few. So this is my friend Debbie. And I'm going to do, if anybody's interested, or tell your friends, family. And these can be done by sitting for 45 minutes, and then I finish it with a photograph. But I'm doing 12 by 12 portraits, just neck up, no glasses, no smiley teeth, for $1,000, and that's framed and shipped. Christmas, I'll be doing like maybe 10. And this is one of my brother. And I think that's all. Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay. Any questions? I can go back to pictures if anybody has questions about anything. I can't hear you.
Sorry. If you don't use grid lines, how do you get the face of your portraits so accurate? From Holly.
Practice. That's one thing I have been a stickler about all of these years. If you look at older work, they're not right. They're not symmetrical. They're not, I have a tendency to push things towards symmetry because it looks better in the long run, even if that's not how a person's face is. But honestly, I have never gridded or projected or traced a figure. That's the only way to learn, is just to keep at it and keep doing it. And that's why sometimes it takes so long to do a painting, because you're correcting all the time. You might not see it until it's, way developed. But I move eyes all the time. It's the worst.
What do you paint with, Carrie? Do you paint with oils or acrylics?
Yeah, oil.
Very nice. Does anyone else have any other questions for Carrie?
Carrie, I have a question for Carrie.
Hi there.
Hi, my name's Kurt. Wouldn't it be a lot easier to start with the background and then layer your subject over the top? You see filling in the background at the end, which I find to be just mechanically very difficult to do.
My problem is I don't know what I want in the background until I've developed the portrait enough to get a feel for, it's almost like they tell me what they want to be when they grow up or what direction I want to go. It's like I said, I don't, like the one I just started, I don't know what I'm doing in the background yet. So I'm holding off because that's the next step for me is I need to start laying that in just to get values right. So I'm not repainting, but yes, by changing the background several times, you find yourself repainting the foreground because of the values and saturation and whatnot has changed. So it's, I think though, you end up with a different painting than if I was just to sit down and take my sketchbook and go, okay, I'm gonna paint this and this is what's gonna be in the background and I've figured it all out. It allows no room for creativity or stream of consciousness that I like to paint that way. I like to work in a flow method. Does that make sense?
It does. But it just seems, as you indicated, as you're layering the background and you're starting to cover up some of the foreground and then you have to go back and repaint that.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be difficult, but apparently you have mastered that technique. Congratulations.
Well, it just takes twice as long because you're repainting it.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have the luxury of time now.
Right. Don't we all? Great question.
We have another question from Holly. Do you ever do collaborations with your husband?
I have ideas, but he hasn't taken on any of those yet. I want him to do little like automated like toys. You know, like if you turn a gear and then the thing pops up and it does things and I could create the paints on them or, you know, whether it be a flower or a person that turns into something. So I've been wanting to do that for years, but I'm just waiting for him to do that.
What I found really interesting from listening to James's, your husband's presentation last month and yours this month was that you both come up with a backstory for your works. Even if his is just a name, he gives all his pieces names, the very unique ones. And then you have these backstories. That's very interesting to me. Do you
I think we
help each other with them?
Yeah, we talk about, that's what we do every night. We talk about art every single night. 5 o'clock martinis. What'd you do today? What are you working on? What's your new ideas? Yeah, we just, every day we do that. And the more you talk, you know, the more ideas come and the more you're thinking about it. And it's great. Yeah, we bounce stuff off each other all the time.
Very nice. Does anyone have any last questions for Carrie before we convene for the day?
I'd just like to thank Carrie. This is very informative. I've learned a whole lot and I miss James, so I'm going to have to go back and catch his. Thank you very much.
Hey, Brenda.
Hi, Carrie.
Good to see your name on there. Where's your face?
It wouldn't be good to see it right now.
Oh, come on. Glad you came.
Enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. Tell Bob I said hi.
And we do always put these on our YouTube channel following, so feel free to go to our YouTube and you'll see James's from last month and all the other ones that we've done during COVID.
When do you post those?
I'll post this one today, so this
Oh, cool.
will be up by the end of the day.
Yeah, I haven't seen James. I thought it might take a month or so for them to get up, but I'll watch James's.
It's up there.
Excellent.
All right.
Hey, Heather, I have another question for Carrie. Carrie, where did you study art?
Savannah College of Art and Design.
Okay.
And that's where I'm doing my grad school. It's all virtual, and they've been virtual for 17 years. So it'll be interesting, but yeah.
Well, good luck. Thank
Right?
you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Carrie, for your time. And thank you everyone for attending Art Club today. And a huge thanks, of course, to Carrie for presenting her work. Tune in next month, Tuesday, October 13th at 1 p.m. and we'll be hosting another artist for a special presentation of their work. Thanks also to our museum members and Visionary Society members who always support our virtual programming and make it possible. So we will see you all next month. Thank you so much for attending. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me, Heather.
Bye, everyone.